The rain slanting across the windows of the secluded Prescott estate felt less like weather and more like a curtain dropping on an era. Inside, 70 candles flickered on a massive cake, casting long, fragile shadows across Sydney Prescott's face. She looked at the flames, her eyes carrying the weight of 3 decades of survival, of phone calls that bled into massacres, of friends lost to the history books, and of a name that had become synonymous with the architecture of American trauma. The past in Woodsboro never truly knocked. It preferred to shatter glass, to override landlines, to slip through the dark architecture of old houses while the world slept, and to remind those who survived that the script was never truly finished. Beside her, her daughter Tatum poured 2 glasses of red wine, her expression a complex mix of celebratory warmth and heavy modern anxiety. Tatum chose that exact moment to drop her latest life update, a revelation that carried an underlying chill. She had recently married a charismatic, intensely handsome man named Kyle Stephen, whose entire existence was swallowed by the true crime industry. Kyle didn't just listen to podcasts, he produced them, spoke about cold cases and blood spatter, not as tragedies, but as truth demanding to be exposed to the light. He possessed a magnetic, controlling charm that made Tatum's chest tighten when he spoke about the Woodsboro legacy. Together, they were raising Tatum's 4-year-old son, Matthew, a quiet boy with eyes too old for his face, caught in the middle of a household built on the commodification of murder. That very night, miles away in a suburban neighborhood wrapped in a suffocating valley fog, little Matthew was left under the watchful eye of his new babysitter, Maya Harkins. The house was quiet, save for the rhythmic clicking of plastic dice against a Monopoly board. Matthew giggled, moving his tiny silver thimble across the cardboard properties, entirely unaware of the shadow stretching past the living room window, a shape dark and fluid against the manicured hedges. Then, the landline rang. A private number flashed on the digital display. Maya picked it up with a heavy sigh, expecting a telemarketer or a late-night solicitor. Instead, the receiver bled a sound that made her spine instantly turn to ice. A heavy, electronic rasp, mechanical yet deeply human. A breathing pattern recognized by an entire generation. The voice asked her a question that had echoed through decades of nightmares. "Do you like scary movies?" Maya didn't flinch initially. She was protective, sharp-tongued, and entirely unwilling to let some anonymous prankster ruin her evening or scare the child in her care. She snapped back, cursing at the receiver, telling the caller to find a better hobby, to grow up, to leave her alone. But the voice changed tone, dropping into a terrifyingly calm, omniscient register. It threatened the unthinkable, describing the exact layout of the house, the clothes Matthew was wearing, and precisely what it would do to the 4-year-old boy sitting just feet away unless Maya agreed to play a game. Terrified, her bravado evaporating into thin air, Maya begged him to leave Matthew out of it. She agreed to the rules. "Who is the hero who saved her town from a massacre?" the voice purred, enjoying the trembling cadence of her breath. Maya breathed rapidly, her eyes darting to the dark hallway. "Sydney Prescott and Sam Carpenter." A low, unsettling chuckle vibrated through the line, a sound of pure algorithmic disdain. "Sam Carpenter doesn't count." Before Maya could ask what that meant, the heavy thud of the front doorbell echoed through the house, rattling the frame. Panic seizing her, she grabbed Matthew, whispering urgently into his ear, telling him to go to the master bedroom upstairs and hide deep within the closet. Bolting down the stairs, she expected to find a monster, but instead, she threw open the door to find her uncle, Lloyd Harkins. He was hyperventilating, his clothes disheveled, his eyes wide with an absolute primal terror. He claimed he had seen something horrific lurking in the tree line, a shape in a robe tracking the house. "Get upstairs," Lloyd stammered, pulling a heavy silver revolver from his coat pocket, his hands shaking so violently he nearly dropped it. Maya fled back to the upper bedroom, locking the heavy wood door behind her. She looked around the room, realization dawning on her too late. The window was already wide open, the sheer curtains billowing in the freezing night air like ghosts dancing in the dark. The phone in her hand rang again, the screen lighting up her terrified face. "I told you," the voice whispered right into her ear, not from the phone, but from the darkness directly behind her. "I climb through windows." The black-cloaked figure materialized from the shadows of the curtains. The silver of a hunting knife flashed in the moonlight. Maya didn't even have time to scream before the blade found its mark, stabbing again and again with a rapid, brutal velocity until a final, precise slice across her neck silenced her forever. Ghostface turned his attention to the room's main closet, ripping the door open with a violent snarl, ready to claim the boy. It was empty. Matthew, driven by some uncanny, silent survival instinct, had hidden in a completely different room down the hall, wedged behind a stack of old blankets. Believing his work was finished, the killer turned, leaped out of the second-story window, and landed perfectly on his feet in the wet grass below, vanishing into the night like a shadow rejoining the dark. Across town, the atmospheric tension was just as thick in a high-rise flat belonging to Sam Carpenter. She sat on the couch, staring into space, while her roommate, Lara Zine, who secretly operated as an undercover FBI agent embedded in the regional task force, stared intently at a glowing laptop screen. Sitting on the floor rug beside Lara was Tyson John, her boyfriend. Tyson wasn't in law enforcement, but he possessed a rare, luminous emotional intelligence that made him the perfect anchor for a woman surrounded by the world's worst impulses. He was a graduate student in behavioral science, a man who understood the human mind not as a puzzle of malice, but as a landscape of resilience. Over the past 2 years, Tyson had taught Lara a profound new understanding of bravery, psychology, and love. "True bravery isn't the absence of fear, Lara," Tyson would often tell her, his voice a calm wave against her storm, his thumb gently tracing her knuckles during their late-night study sessions. "It's looking at the darkest parts of human nature, acknowledging the terror, and choosing to love fiercely anyway. If you let the monsters change how you love, they've already won." He had taught her how to read micro-expressions, how to de-escalate panic in victims, and how to keep her own heart soft, despite the horrors she tracked by day. He was her sanctuary. The quiet sanctuary of the apartment shattered when Lara's laptop pinged with an encrypted alert from the bureau. The news of Maya Harkin's brutal murder was flashing on the police scanners. The copycat killers were back, and the staging was identical to the historical profiles. Lara's phone buzzed with a coded message from Kyle Stephen, who leveraged his high-level true crime tech firm connections with federal intelligence agencies to access ongoing investigations. Kyle's text was brief, urgent, and precise. The killers were planning a massive theatrical strike synchronized with the Stab Show retrospective taking place at the local historic theater tonight at precisely 7 o'clock. While Sam and Lara stood over the kitchen island, meticulously planning their next move and mapping out the theater's parameters, Tyson stood by the window, watching the rain pour over the city streets. He felt a deep, instinctual worry for Lara, sensing the cold, professional wall she was building up to protect herself from the oncoming trauma. He walked over, stepping between her and the tactical maps, gently cupping her face in his hands. "Remember what we talked about," Tyson said, his eyes locked onto hers with an absolute, beautiful intensity. "Use your training, keep your head clear, but don't let the fear dictate your moves. Your empathy is your strength, Lara. Don't lose it out there. I love you. Go save them." That kiss anchored her, giving her a sense of profound clarity as she and Sam slipped out into the night, leaving Tyson to monitor the feeds from the apartment. Meanwhile, across the neon-soaked district of the city, the party was roaring at the industrial-style club, The Foundry. The heavy, rhythmic bass line throbbed through the floorboards, creating a sensory overload that masked the storm raging outside. Inside, the air was thick with theatrical haze, flashing strobe lights, and the euphoric shouts of hundreds of young partygoers, completely detached from the killings happening on the outskirts of town. Moving through the packed, sweaty dance floor was Jenny Valsh, one of Lara's closest friends from her civilian life. Drenched in sweat, laughing and holding a drink, Jenny pulled out her phone, stepping away from the massive speakers toward a slightly quieter VIP corridor near the back of the venue. She dialed Lara's number, wanting nothing more than a casual chat, a laugh, and a distraction from her own hectic week, completely unaware of the operational chaos Lara was currently entangled in. The phone rang and rang, ultimately transitioning to voicemail. Jenny sighed, rolling her eyes with an affectionate laugh, screaming over the muffled music into the speaker, "Lara girl, you are missing the absolute best night of the entire year. The DJ is insane. Call me back when you get out of your head and stop working so hard." She hung up, sliding the phone into her back pocket, entirely unaware of the shadow moving with lethal, mechanical purpose just a few feet away behind a set of heavy fire doors. Behind the heavy industrial steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only," the club's main ventilation and environmental control room sat in absolute darkness. A gloved hand pushed the door open, the hinges silent. Ghostface stood over the massive air intake fans that circulated oxygen to the entire multi-level venue. From a tactical duffel bag slung over his shoulder, the killer pulled out a cluster of heavy, military-grade gas grenades, the exact same emerald green chemical compound that had been procured through black market defense channels. With a synchronized, metallic click, the safety pins were pulled. Ghostface dropped the canisters directly into the spinning blades of the primary intake vents. The heavy metal blades chopped at the canisters, breaching the pressurized seals, and a violent, hissing fog of thick, luminous green gas was instantly sucked into the building's centralized air system. Back on the main dance floor, the transition from pure euphoria to absolute execution was agonizingly swift. Jenny was just stepping back into the center of the room, her hands raised to the rhythm of the music, when the overhead vents began to vomit the heavy green gas. At first, the crowd cheered, assuming it was a dramatic, high-end new fog machine effect programmed specifically for the headliner's track drop. But within 10 seconds, the cheering turned to confused, choked gasps. The bass continued to boom, shaking the walls as the chemical agent hit the lungs of the partygoers. People began to clutch their throats, their eyes widening in sudden, paralyzed terror as their respiratory systems locked up. The synchronized dancing instantly disintegrated into a chaotic, suffocating stampede of bodies, tearing at each other for air that didn't exist. Clubgoers collapsed over the bars, shattered glasses flying everywhere. They fell onto the sticky floors and stumbled over lounge seating, their bodies seizing violently as the toxin induced rapid neural failure. Jenny watched in absolute, horrified comprehension as the person standing right next to her dropped instantly to their knees, blood and foam flecking their lips. She tried to turn, to run back toward the fire exit she had just used, but her lungs betrayed her on her very first breath. The emerald gas burned like liquid fire inside her chest, freezing her windpipe. Her phone slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the floorboards, its screen cracking as her knees buckled under her weight. Through the dimming, fragmented vision of her final moments, she looked up past the flashing neon strobes to see the silhouette of Ghostface. The killer was standing calmly in the elevated DJ booth above, having neutralized the audio tech, looking down at a dance floor that had transformed into a silent, neon-lit tomb. Within 2 minutes, the music played on to a room filled entirely with corpses, a testament to a new wave of calculated, non-traditional terror. The morning sun brought no relief, only a cold grey light that exposed the spreading rot. At Matthew's preschool, a calculated power outage isolated the boy and his teacher, Jonathan Palms, in the school's generator room. While they attempted to reset the breakers, Ghostface struck the locked classroom. Utilizing the exact same green chemical gas that had wiped out the foundry, the killer purged the entire class in a horrific act of ideological cleansing. The school's volatile, media-panicked principal, Daniel Rifkins, instantly scapegoated the traumatized, surviving 4-year-old, expelling Matthew on the spot to cover his own institutional liability. But Rifkin's bureaucratic cruelty was cut short hours later when Ghostface ambushed him in his own home, leaving his severed head in the bathroom for Lara to discover during her active investigation. Tracking the breadcrumbs of the escalating conspiracy, Lara and Sam rescued Matthew from the home and rushed to the high-tech estate of Kyle's business partner, Uncle Luke. They interrupted a tense dinner between Tatum, Kyle, and a young theological student named Abraham. Before anyone could process the tactical intrusion, Ghostface shattered the dining room window. In a chaotic burst of violence, the killer threw a hunting knife cleanly through Abraham's chest. As Abraham bled out on the floor, begging Tatum to protect Matthew at all costs, Tatum threw a kitchen knife that embedded itself deeply in Ghostface's arm. The killer pulled it out seamlessly, but a sudden, synchronized counterattack from little Matthew and Kyle forced the masked figure to retreat into the rainy night. Later that evening, the trap snapped shut with devastating precision. Sidney Prescott met Kyle at a secluded restaurant where he tried to manipulate her into filming a documentary for Town Closure. When Sidney walked out into the foggy parking lot, she heard a scream from within. Running back inside, she was ambushed by Ghostface, the blade piercing her heart. As she lay dying, she accused Kyle, only for the killer to remove the mask and reveal Uncle Luke. Luke confessed his twisted manifesto. He and Kyle were murdering the legacy of Stab to keep little Matthew pure, purging his classmates and the culture before they could corrupt him. Kyle stood right behind Luke, his camera live streaming Sidney's final breaths to a dark web audience before donning his own Ghostface mask to finalize the purge. Watching the horrific live stream from the cyber precinct, Lara realized the scale of the betrayal. She and Detective Harry Monley frantically worked to trace the feed, unaware that the precinct's perimeter had already been breached by a compromised operative. The door to the Cybertech lab creaked open. Kyle stepped through the shadows, the Ghostface mask pushed up onto his forehead, a silenced pistol in his hand. But he wasn't alone. He had intercepted Tyson, who had been frantically trying to reach Lara after the live stream went live, tracking her phone to the station. Kyle held a heavy, notched blade against Tyson's throat. Lara froze, her FBI training instantly warring with the primal terror of losing the man who taught her how to live. "Drop the gun, Lara," Kyle mocked, his voice dripping with sadistic, psychopathic amusement. "Your little psychologist boyfriend thought he could talk me down when I caught him outside. Thought he could analyze my trauma. He's pathetic. He thinks love wins." Tyson, even with cold steel pressed against his jugular, looked directly into Lara's eyes. There was no panic in his expression, only the profound bravery he had always preached to her during their quiet moments. He saw the way her hand trembled on her service weapon, the way her tactical training was failing under emotional weight. He used the psychological grounding techniques he had taught her, speaking in a calm, steady, hypnotic cadence, despite the blade drawing a bead of blood on his neck. "Lara, look at me. Breathe," Tyson said, his voice a beautiful, steady anchor in the sterile, fluorescent light of the station. "Don't let him win the mind game. Don't let his hatred dictate your canvas. Remember who you are. Remember what we built." "Shut up!" Kyle snarled, tightening his grip, his knuckles turning white. "I love you, Lara," Tyson whispered, his eyes locked onto hers with absolute, eternal clarity. "Be brave." In a cruel, abrupt motion, born of pure malice, Kyle drove the blade deep into Tyson's chest and violently pushed him aside. Tyson collapsed onto the linoleum floor, the life draining from him instantly as his blood pooled under the desks. A guttural, agonizing scream of pure, unadulterated grief tore from Lara's throat. The emotional grounding Tyson gave her didn't shatter. It snapped into a hyper-focused, lethal rage. Before she could pull her trigger, Kyle fired a round that shot Harry Monlett dead, spun, and fired a second round that grazed Lara's shoulder, the force sending her crashing into the heavy server racks, temporarily dazed. Kyle grabbed the keys to a marked police cruiser from Monlett's belt and fled into the night, heading straight for Tatum's safe house to finish the bloodline. When Kyle arrived at the safe house, he threw the front door open, but Sam Carpenter was waiting in the shadows of the foyer, instantly shooting him in the shoulder. A vicious, desperate brawl ensued through the halls. Kyle managed to use his tactical weight to pin Sam, cuffing her and dragging her into the kitchen, where Luke held Matthew and Tatum hostage at gunpoint. Kyle jeered that the Stab franchise was officially over, and that they were all in a permanent timeout. But Sam, fueled by a ferocious ancestral adrenaline, violently shattered the chain of her handcuffs against the counter, rapidly unlocking Matthew and Tatum. Kyle bolted outside to the police cruiser to retrieve his tactical rifle from the front seat, but Sam pursued him directly into the pouring rain. Standing in the muddy driveway, she fired 2 rounds directly into his chest, dropping him instantly. "This is for my friend Lara," she cried out into the storm, though the vengeance felt hollow, an echoing chamber without Tyson there to guide the peace he always wanted for them. Inside the house, Luke locked the heavy deadbolts, trapping them in the dark. Sam lunged forward, driving a knife deep into Luke's side, growling that she could always find another exit, before unlocking the side door and ushering Matthew across the street into the safety of the dark park. But Tatum stopped in the doorway. The psychological weight of her marriage, the terror inflicted on her young son, and the ultimate realization of what these men had done culminated in a quiet, chilling resolve. She walked backward, stepping out of the rain and back into the quiet foyer to ensure the nightmare was truly finished. She walked into the dark living room where Luke lay motionless on the floor, his eyes closed in the shadows. She knelt down, her fingers wrapping around the cold handle of the hunting knife dropped near his hand. Luke's eyes snapped open, wild and bloodshot. His blood-soaked frame rose to attack her one last time, his hands clawing at her throat. Tatum didn't flinch, her heart turning to stone. She stepped into his guard and drove the blade squarely into his sternum, leaning her full weight into the hilt. As the final light faded from his eyes, she leaned down, her lips brushing his ear, whispering the final, devastating truth into the dark. An eye for an eye.